Hello, friends. Chris Corsi here, president of Thrive Today, and I want to welcome you to the Relational Skills in Real Life podcast. I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is a big one. Is it unspiritual to deal with emotions? That's right. Are we bad Christians if we talk about feel and process emotions? Well, friends, some people were taught and some people believe that it's unspiritual to deal with emotions. And this can mean that having emotions is not spiritual, nor is it fruitful to talk about, much less feel emotions. What a heavy yoke of bondage this is for people who believe that they're more spiritually minded by discounting emotions. Not only is this a misunderstanding of the Bible and God, but it's a toxic ingredient for families and communities to have this unhealthy view of emotions. And friends, it can be very painful for people who grow up feeling this way. You see, the belief that emotions are bad or unspiritual is based on an unhealthy view of asceticism, where people feel like emotions should be ignored because emotions are tied to the body and they believe the body is bad. That's their theology. And they believe that the body is something to get away from, something to shut down. You see, asceticism historically in the Christian traditions is about training desire, not denying humanity. So if you want to think about practices like fasting or silence or simplicity, the goal isn't to feel less, or is it to detach from your emotions? Friends, the goal is to become free from being ruled by your impulses so that you can better love God and others more fully. Even someone like St. Augustine did not teach that we should eliminate desire, but we should rightly order it. So asceticism can be easily become distorted when it turns into suppressing emotions instead of understanding them, or treating the body or feelings as unspiritual, or equating numbness with holiness. Friends, numbness is not holiness. These beliefs are closer to a Greek philosophical influence like Stoicism that's been taken too far. This is not the heart of biblical spirituality. So you might see a healthier view of asceticism that says, I feel this, but I don't have to avoid it or I don't have to obey it. So I feel this, but I don't have to obey it. I'm noticing it. Suppression, which is unhealthy, would say, I shouldn't feel this, so I won't acknowledge it. And friends, these are two different paths which lead to completely different outcomes. One is I feel it, but I don't have to give in to it. The other is I shouldn't feel it, so I won't acknowledge it. There's a biblical tension here that you can actually hold both. We can take every thought captive, which is discipline, and we can pour out our hearts before God, which is emotional honesty. And we see Jesus even modeled this. At times he withdrew, at times he fasted. Jesus exercised discipline. We also see Jesus weeping at times or feeling anguish. He expressed deep emotions sometimes in the Bible. So the pattern isn't less emotion equals more spiritual. It's greater integration brings deeper and more maturity. So people fear emotions are not something that believers should deal with or have. And the reality is that what we don't process, we will pass on to other people, especially our children. And this is true when it comes to unprocessed pain as well as having emotions. I found that when I ignore my emotions, they don't disappear. They just come out in ways that I don't intend or expect. But when I bring my emotions to the living God, they become a doorway for healing and deeper connection with God. So the brain ultimately has to learn, how do I feel emotions and share my emotions and quiet and calm my emotions. This is how we learn to return to joy from our upsets. This is a very relational process. And I often hear from people who are raised in communities where they believe that it was unspiritual to focus on emotions and to have emotions. And people get confused because they learned that emotions were bad. And what's important is knowing truth and the Bible apart from emotions. So as long as we have truth, we don't need emotions. Well, one of my friends was raised to believe this way, and he was very confused about the Bible, God's ways, as well as emotions. He grew up learning to push away his emotions and trying to hide emotions and stuff them rather than feel them. He tried to outrun them, which does not work very well. And the reality is that these patterns only create pressure inside of us that'll quickly become unmanageable. It ends up leading to hidden addictions and all kinds of challenges. So these beliefs stunted my friend's growth because his parents did not attune with him or his emotions. They were dismissive in their attachment. They did not know how to feel, share, and quiet emotions. So my friend was stunted in his maturity, and what made it worse was his parents justified their treatment towards him by discounting his emotions and his needs and bringing God into the equation and using scripture to justify their treatment. And this only left him feeling alone and confused and feeling very unimportant. So once my friend started learning relational skills, everything changed. He started to find ways to calm and quiet himself, and he started to learn how to return to joy from his emotions. This led to profound healing and freedom and joy. So, friends, we see emotions throughout the scripture. Jesus weeps at Lazarus' tomb. David pours out his grief repeatedly in the Psalms. Grief is not a weakness, it's a deeply human response, and it's welcomed in God's presence. Jesus overturns the tables in the temple. We don't quite know what he's feeling because it doesn't tell us in the text. However, we can assume he's got some big feelings going on there. Moses burns with anger when he sees the golden calf and what the Israelites were doing. Adam and Eve hide in shame in Genesis 3. Peter weeps bitterly after denying Jesus. So the Bible doesn't teach don't feel, it shows us to feel deeply, bring it to God, and let God shape what we do with it. So here's our application step for today. I want to invite you to practice this exercise, to reflect on a recent time you were feeling an emotion. You can even ask the Lord to bring to mind a moment you were feeling an emotion. And then now we get relational and invite Jesus to bring to mind a thought or an image about what he was doing in this moment. So this means we get relational by reflecting on times in our life where we felt God's closeness. And then we say, Lord, what were you doing? What do you want me to know about your presence in this place where I was feeling this emotion? And we want to interact with Jesus. And we're looking for any thoughts or images that come to mind, any scriptures or any responses. And we're looking for peace. And we continue to interact with Jesus until we feel peace. This is a simple but a very meaningful little exercise. Now, I want to encourage you to visit thrivetoday.org for more resources on emotions. We have a Tools for Navigating Emotions Habit Builder course. This is a course designed to help you improve your return to joy skills. And I'm working on a new book about emotions and returning to joy that's coming out in January of 27. And there's a great book by Dr. Jim Wilder and Dr. Marcus Warner called The Solution of Choice. If you want to learn a little more about some of the beliefs around emotions in the body. But friends, it's my prayer that not only will you learn to feel, share, and quiet your emotions, but this will be the start of something good for you today.